Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to the live stream today. Well, today we have a very interesting guest. He's been a Mormon. You know those guys that would knock on the doors just like the JDubs would. Did you ever catch up with them? Did you ever have a conversation with them? Well, are there any similarities between what it's like being now an ex-JDub and being an ex-Mormon? Well, our guest today is going to be able to help us look at that and so much more. So let's bring Geoff on to find out a little bit more about the comparisons. Good evening, Geoff.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on our live stream today. So, Mormons, I'm not going to say the JDubs, but from what you know of the JDubs versus the belief that you grew up with, any similarities?
Yeah, quite a few similarities actually. Well, first off, this I wasn't exposed too much to JDubs, but I did have a grandfather who I think was an elder, if I remember correctly. I think I heard that title being floated around his house here and there. But yeah, similarities between the two churches are, the fact that they're both 19th century religions. They're both American based. They're both very, very, very patriarchal. They also change. They change with social pressure. They change not necessarily when God reveals anything, but when the public gets a little on them for it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit of your history for a start.
Sure.
How did you become a Mormon?
I was born and raised in the church. Yeah. To a very small family. It was my older brother and I, and my parents. My brother left at a very young age. But I was in it. I was in it for the long haul. I loved it. I participated in it, from a baby in what's called nursery up until I was 29 years old. After high school, the typical thing to do is to go on a mission. That's kind of what's expected. So I ended up going on a mission. I was called, if you will, on a mission to Ecuador, Guayaquil, Ecuador. I spent 2 years there from 2001 to 2003. Had a great time. It was a great experience. I mean, I lived in another country. I learned a new language. I lived in a different culture. It was wonderful. It was just really saturated with wonderful experiences, and the people there were great. And then when I got home, I ended up moving I was born and raised in Oregon. I moved to Utah, the Mecca of Mormonism. And I ended up getting married. I was married for about 6 years. I was married in the Mormon temple, which is sort of that's the next big step after the mission, is to get married in the temples. It's being sealed. It's not necessarily just a marriage for life, but they look at it as a marriage for eternity. So when you die, you're still sealed as husband and wife with your family in the next life, whatever that is. Yep. And so when I was after about 6 years, we were divorced, which is a big thing in the church. You hear, divorce is a no-no, but it's surprising. The statistics say about 50% of, maybe that's changed, but last I heard, is about 50% of all of marriages do end in divorce in the Mormon church. So it actually is a very common thing. And moved out to New York City for graduate school, and I kind of sort of started to meddle a little bit in experimenting with things. I experimented with alcohol. I remember the first time I had coffee. I remember the first time I had tea. It was quite the experience. And I went out there. I met a young woman at grad school. We got together. We had children. And on September 6th, 2014, about 9:30 to 10 o'clock at night, is when everything changed for me. The moment I held my child in my arms for the first time, I realized I couldn't relate to it anymore. That my relationship with her couldn't be the same that a God would have with me. And that was the moment it all ended. I realized I was atheist at that moment. But I was still a member of the church. I was still on the rolls. I was still sort of like studying. I was still kind of in it. And about a week later, I realized I just had no need for the church anymore. And I wrote my resignation letter. And that was it. That was the end of the story.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you weren't allowed tea and coffee and alcohol, and what's that all about?
Nobody really knows what that's all about.
Okay.
You grow up conditioned to believe that those are just harmful substances. In some of the revelatory scriptures, it states that hot drinks aren't good for the body. So somehow that got translated into coffee, tea, not herbal tea. Herbal tea is okay. It could have, for years and years, I thought it was a caffeine thing. That we just couldn't drink the caffeine. It was just too saturated with caffeine. But apparently that's not the case, because the church recently just gave the go ahead that caffeine is okay. But still the coffee and the tea is still an issue that nobody really knows about. I just took it as an obedience thing from there, that it was just be obedient to what they say, and everything will be fine.
So along the way, you mentioned that you went on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something to be expected from the young males and females in the Mormon church?
Yeah, particularly from the young males. Yeah, you are from the beginning, when you're a child, you're conditioned to prepare yourself to go on a mission. And it's a 2-year mission. You go, and 15, 16 hours a day, you're knocking doors, you're teaching people about the church, you're sharing with them your conviction, your testimony. And it's 7 days a week, it's 15 to 15 hours a day. It's a big thing. It's a big deal. And it's a rite of passage too. I mean, when you hold that title of coming home from your mission and being a returned missionary, you are you're immediately kind of put in this on the team, in the starting lineup. I mean, you're good to go. You are you're golden.
A celebrity?
Yeah, pretty much. Especially, where I came from was such a small town that very few of us went on missions. And when I got home, I loved it. I loved the attention. I loved the pseudo worship, if you will. It was great. I loved it. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So the mission, what's involved in that? If you're going to be knocking on doors for 15 odd hours a day, how do you feed yourselves?
Well, I mean, when I was there, I received a stipend every couple of weeks. A stipend every couple of weeks. So some money that came to me every couple of weeks, that we could purchase food. We had people who made the food for us. We had a lot of members of the church who supported us, and I don't know what it's like in the States, but in South America, we had people cook for us. We paid them to cook us lunch, sometimes dinner. So somehow we fed ourselves. Whether that's just street food or we actually made some time to sit down and get comfortable and have a meal.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
So after you'd done your mission and you went back home, did you have to go and knock on doors anymore?
No, that was that was a great thing for me. I hated it. I absolutely hated knocking on doors. I hated sort of I hated, when people invited us in, I was excited thinking, oh, this is going to be great for numbers. This is going to feel good for me. But it was always such an uncomfortable, intrusive thing to me to knock on doors. Okay. So when I got home, I would go out with the missionaries, the two missionaries that were lived where I lived. And I would accompany them as a member to try and, get people, try to be on more of a relatable level with some of the people that they're teaching. But I didn't, I really did. It wasn't anything you had to do. You weren't commanded to do it. You weren't told to do it. It was kind of a voluntary thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. When you were knocking on the doors, anything funny happen?
There were, yeah, I mean, besides being rejected a lot, there were times where I had a person spit on me one time. I guess that's not funny. That's a,
No.
yeah, yeah. A lot of people would get really high, and we'd knock on a door, and we'd smell the marijuana smoke, and they come in and, hey, come on in, yeah, let's talk. And so we'd go and talk with them for a little bit, just to kind of fill up the day. But yeah, every missionary has some weird experience, some quirky thing that's happened to them. I can't think of an exact thing that was super weird, but yeah, I do remember talking to a lot of people who were really high.
They didn't give you any of these special cookies or anything?
No. I was offered. No, I was offered wine one time. I think they brought out some glasses of wine and sat there staring at us one time to see if we would we'd take the bait. And I almost did. I was brand new on the mission, so I picked it up about ready to drink it. Yep. And my companion at the time, he quickly shut me down, and we got up and left. But yeah. Well, there was a time where another companion and I drank what's called chicha in Ecuador. And it was, I think the way they made it was they would chew up bananas and spit them out and let them ferment, and it would turn into this sludgy alcoholic drink. And we were given this one time, and as awkward as we were, as ignorant as we were, we drank it. And I'd never had alcohol before, so I just thought it was really strong, just a strong drink. But yeah, we were kind of wobbly there for a little bit, but we played it off the ignorance guard. Yeah.
Oh,
that's
handy.
No problems. Yeah.
Okay, so you got back from your mission year too. Can you just go back one more step though? Mm-hmm. What was when you think back to your childhood, growing up as a Mormon, what was it like?
It was great because it was the only thing I knew. I mean, it was my entire identity, and I was being conditioned to do that forever. And so it was wonderful. I whatever they said I wanted to do, I wanted to be. We would wear those little name tags that said, that missionaries do wear when you see the black name tag. As kids, we would wear those that said future missionary. And yeah, and everybody supported us, and future missionary. Oh, you're going to be such a good little missionary. And that really empowered and motivated me as a child, and I loved it. And I knew that was what I needed to do to please them, not just to please the members of the church, but ultimately to please God. It was just I loved it. I had as a teenager, it's all I knew as well. But I had a great friend group, and I still do to this day. I maintain friends who are active members in the church, and I loved it. We had a lot of youth activities. There were a lot of dances. There were a lot of get-togethers, and you just really become one and the same. And it's very powerful. It's very empowering, and it's very special. Yeah.
So, did you get baptized? Do you call it baptism?
Baptism. Yeah. When I was 8.
8.
That's the youngest you can get baptized. Typically, when people are born into the church, they get baptized at 8. Yeah. And it's not like we make a choice. It's seen as well. Jeff's made the decision to get baptized. He's going to be blessed for this decision that he's made. But it's not really a decision that you make at 8 years old. You don't know anything.
You don't.
You're just kind of expected to do it. So when I was 8, I was baptized.
Yeah. Okay, so you grew up. Now you mentioned, we'll come forward a little bit now. Obviously, you're no longer a Mormon.
Correct.
Do you have any of their beliefs?
No, I'm atheist, so I don't have. I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in gods. So no, I certainly do not share those beliefs. I can't really think of anything that would jive, other than the social aspect. I mean, it was just a great club. It was just a great a team to belong to. You were always welcome And that's, I do like that about Mormonism. I like the welcoming aspect when they welcome people. I know what it's
Yep.
about, though. I know it's
Yes.
about, ultimately about converting them.
Yes.
But I do appreciate that part of it. And I still do. In fact, I went to a Halloween uh, party at a church with a family member just last week.
Yeah.
So it was nice to be there. The smell of the church was it was a little triggering. I mean, it smelled the same, it looked the same.
Yeah.
And so it was my first time in many years in going there, but yeah, it was so I do appreciate that sort of welcoming part of it.
Yeah, no, that happens in the JDubs as well.
Yeah.
So you mentioned when your baby came along,
Mm-hmm.
that was at 9:30ish. You realized you were gone.
Yeah.
What led up to that?
I had been I wasn't dabbling in any sort of apostate literature, if you will, but I was just starting to think a little bit for myself.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
starting to think. My mind was being open. I just graduated with my master's degree, so I was and it was in social work. So you think real hard in social work and you process things, and so I started to process a little bit the reality of this, and I couldn't quite understand the belief in a God in the way that the Mormon Church presented it. And so that the moment my child was born and I held her, that's when I realized I just couldn't relate to a God that supposedly loved me unconditionally based on conditions. And so immediately that went out the door. I just had the belief was gone in a second. Yeah. And then
Okay, so you got to that stage where Bub's come along. You had that awakening, as it were. What was the next step in your journey? Did you get kicked out of the church? Did you write a letter?
It took about a week or so until I started to realize that I'm still a member of the church. I don't know if I should resign or if I should just stay as a member. I don't know what to do. I don't believe it. I have no need for it anymore. But then I felt the obligation from that point on to look up the history of the church, to look up specific things that I just was not taught in the church, and that was just completely pushed away. And coming to terms with that, I would say it's probably a few weeks after that I did resign. After reading, and I went down the rabbit hole. I was reading constantly, day and night. I took some paternal leave from work, and that's all I did. Took care of my child, of course. Didn't neglect her, but read a lot of anti-Mormon literature, which is just basically real factual history. And that was the point. Yeah, that was the point. Then I started to question other members of the church, what they thought of it, why this, why that, to see if they had any thoughts on it. And immediately I became a threat. Immediately. I lost a lot of friends, lost a lot of acquaintances, family members who just didn't want to hear it from me. And so, and that was it. I wrote my letter, resigned, and got a letter back from the church saying I'm completely done. I'm off the rolls of the church. I'm no longer a member.
Oh, really?
And so that, so that was kind of.
I didn't get that.
No.
Boy, that's slack.
Right. I'm sure it cost them a lot of money to print those letters, because there's a lot of people resigning. With the advent of the internet, with the advent of Google, this whole thing is just being crushed. The foundation is just collapsing right underneath itself. And so, that's kind of my trophy. I still have it. I still have it somewhere.
Wow. Better frame it.
Yeah, I should. I think I took a picture of it and put it online. Again, I lost a couple friends, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, dear me. Okay, so you mentioned the word apostate and anti-Mormon. What's the difference? Is that just terminology, or?
Yeah, I don't think there's a difference at all. I'd heard both apostate and anti-Mormon growing up. Anti-Mormon seems to be the more common term. in the Mormon
Yep.
Church to use as opposed to apostate, because I think it really puts a lot of demonization on the person as an anti-Mormon. You're very anti against Mormons. You're very against
Yeah.
this group of people, and so it's a good way to sort of like I said, demonize the person in a way that's going to make you feel stronger and more comfortable in walking away and stepping away from a conversation or stepping away from a relationship that they deem as unhealthy, spiritually.
Okay, so you wrote your letter. We had a question come in with regards to that. Are you treated any differently by those who are still in the church?
Yeah, I am. I don't want to throw assumptions out there and say that, I know what they're thinking, but I experienced the same thing when I was an active Mormon and people would leave the church. I felt like they were enemies, spiritual enemies to me. And so I chose not to associate with a lot of people who left the church. And I can only assume that that's kind of how they feel as well, because that's kind of that's the universal feeling, the universal teaching and conditioning that you get at a young age. So am I treated differently? I think I'm looked at differently. I think I'm looked at differently, as opposed to just being treated differently. But we're still friends. I'm still friends with a lot of very active,
you're still friends,
Mormons. Yeah, still friends.
What about your family? Like in the JDub, once you are not a JDub anymore, whether you've been kicked out, whether you leave voluntary, whether you fade, whether whatever, that's it. Family as a whole, you are very discouraged from having anything to do with apostates or anti-JDubs.
Right. I think that's a big difference, I think, between the two churches too. Because it's not explicitly preached, but the fact that somebody is an apostate or an anti-Mormon, they immediately become anti-you, anti-your beliefs. And, they're not commanded to not associate with people and to distance themselves from people. But they are encouraged to distance themselves from any teachings that go against the church. And so when you are an ex-Mormon, you are, you're kind of just labeled an anti-Mormon from there, going against the church. So I think implicitly you are, you're expected to just not kind of have that type of conversation, because it would, the cognitive dissonance is just too much for someone who's a very active Mormon. But that's, and I've known people who are both ex-JW and ex-Mormon, and they've told me that they'd much rather prefer being an ex-Mormon because of that fact, because of the fact that they're, they can still be with their families. They can still be, together on holidays and dinners and just be together generally. Not that it's any less awkward, but it's, it's not an expectation that you're to sort of distance yourself from them.
Okay. So before we came online to do the stream, you mentioned that the Mormon Church uses disfellowshipped as a word, a terminology. And then you also mentioned excommunicate. What is the difference between those two things?
Disfellowshipped is that's when you're stripped of some opportunities and some rights as a full member of the church. So there's particular things that you can't participate in when you're disfellowshipped, and that's up to the local leaders to decide what that is. Excommunication, on the other hand, is when you're completely stripped from your title as a member of the church. You're off the rolls. You're no longer, you're unbaptized, if you will. So disfellowship it's kind of a hopeful thing, if you will, because you can be restored to full membership. You can participate in saying prayers. You can participate in actively, participating in discussions. But excommunication, no, that's it. It's the end of the book for you. Yeah, I mean, I assume you can go back. You can go back. You can probably work yourself back into baptism again. But it's probably a long, harsh process to do that. Yeah.
Would you ever want to do it?
No reason to. I would maybe for the fun of it, but it's I just don't think that it would be. I wouldn't want to put the emotional and mental energy in trying to relearn this stuff that I've deprogrammed from my brain. Wouldn't even want to take that chance.
Yeah, you talked about deprogramming. How long is it taking you to deprogram?
That's a great question. I don't know. That's a really good question. I'd say I'm still, given the fact that I do have friends and family in the church. I'm not at the mercy of the church's teachings. I'm not at the mercy of its whitewashed history. I don't believe any of that, and I recognize that. But I still, I appreciate some aspects of the church. I appreciate some parts of, the social aspects, like I said, of the church. The, my social group. I don't think that'll ever change. And knowing how the church operates I think it's a very fundamental thing in my life, because that'll always be part of my identity, whether I want it to or not, and when I talk with people, for example, as this little hair here, when I talk to people, for example, a lot of times when I'm talking about the church, I say we a lot, like we believe this, or we do this. And it just comes naturally to me to say that. So I think deprogramming myself with the vernacular and the vocabulary, I think that'll stay there and part of my identity. And sometimes I do defend the church. Sometimes I go on discussion boards and see, a Mormon versus Christian discussion board. And sometimes I really do defend the church because I've lived it. And again, that's part of who I was growing up. And that's part of who I think I'll always be. Yeah. So I think it'll always kind of be there for me. Yeah. But as far as the beliefs, as far as the teachings, as far as the patriarchy, as far as the history, I mean, that's just kind of, that's gone. That went away real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I find even, the JDubs talk about the word truth, that truth. Yeah. In other words, that's the only religion. And quite often that would slip out. And it takes a lot of conscious effort to go, stop saying it. No, it's a lie.
So that's what it takes. That's what it takes. Yeah.
It does. It's not easy. So it's good to see that your journey going along those lines, you're still working on it. And
I think it'll always be a work in progress. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So have you, you've left, you're still in contact with some of your Mormon friends. Mm-hmm. Do you ever try and talk them out of it? Try and show them what you have learned and what you've discovered when they've whitewashed over history and some of their beliefs. You ever tried to?
Yeah, I used to. When I first started to study some of the material that we couldn't as active Mormons. It was eye-opening. It was enlightening to me, and so I wanted to share that with everybody. And I would share that with people that I knew on my mission in Ecuador. I'd share that with people here in the United States, friends, family. And after a while, though, I started to see how it can still be, in some ways, a positive force for some people when they go through things. And I don't want to take those positive things away from people if they're really getting something out of it that's helping them cope with life, whatever that may be. So I've toned it down quite a bit. I don't really, it's also very triggering to talk about some of those things. And so I don't like to put myself in that position. Now, if anybody's curious and they ask me, absolutely, I will have that conversation. And I'll get down to the nitty gritty and we'll get really radical with it. But I typically just kind of keep it to myself until someone asks about it or tries to elicit that information. Unless there's something weird that happens, which sometimes weird things happen in the church, then I'll surely throw it out there just to get a reaction. But I think it's just kind of a reaction. I don't think that many people are going to take the bait. So I recognize that and I realize that. So I just kind of wait until they ask me about it. So I've gone through that phase of trying to pull people out. I haven't been very successful. So
Yeah, no, that's very much like the JDubs.
yeah.
So you mentioned it's a phase. What to you stands out that it is like a phase you've gone through, and on your journey, you're now focusing on other things?
Yeah, I think it does. The whole journey of leaving the religion does come in phases. At least, with some of the people that I've spoken with, who and
Yeah,
interacted with, who have left the church, we go through a lot of very similar things. You go through kind of the grieving process at first.
yeah,
You're dealing with grief. You're losing your identity, and that's sad, and
yep,
that's very scary. And I always kind of compared it with sort of coming out of a bubble and just being naked and walking around, say, New York City. I mean, it's just uncomfortable. You're sad. You don't know how to really maneuver through the world without the church's teachings, without being an active member, because you have to develop your own friendship, your own relationships with other people who are not members, and that's a very hard thing to do when you've been, when that's the only thing in life is how to interact with other Mormons. So that's part of that phase. Another phase is the anger. You get very,
yep,
I went through that angry phase where, wow, the church really screwed me over, and now I'm going to try and pull everybody out that I can. But that's, a lot of members will put up their defenses. So you go through that phase. Sometimes it's longer for others, shorter for others. And then you go through sort of the coping phase. This is kind of what I went through, where you figure out how to maneuver through life. You figure out how
yeah,
to do things that are not related to the church, and how to enjoy life, and how to feel free, and how to get rid of the guilt, the guilt and the shame of actually leaving. And it could be different for other people, but that's kind of what I went through, and what I'm familiar with a lot of people that I know who left the church is going through different phases. But I think the ones that are most common with everybody, I think, is the grief
yeah,
phase, and
yep,
then that anger, and then the sadness, and then it's just you learn how to cope with the world, you learn how to cope with everything, and then you move on. You move on from there, and you figure it out. Yeah.
mm. So do you think you're coping now?
Yeah, I think I'm doing a lot better. I think I'm doing a lot better. It's taken some time, but yeah, I am. I don't hold a grudge like I used to.
Yep,
Um, Again, because I see the silliness of it, and it just, to me, is more comical than anything.
yep,
Um, and I see people discussing it, and I see people fighting over this, the beliefs and the doctrines of the church with other religions. I just kind of sit back and just watch that and observe it, and think, man, I'm just glad I'm not in either side of this
yep,
argument, any of
yep.
their shoes. So
Watch the comedy
yeah.
show
Oh
happening
yeah, yeah.
before you.
It's great, great entertainment. Great entertainment. It's a great way to spend a Saturday night. So.
So tell me, you say you're now coping from where you were a few years ago. What were some of the coping mechanisms that really helped you to get to where you are right now on your journey?
Yeah. The big one was actually just seeing a therapist. That was the biggest coping mechanism for me. And thankfully, I'm a licensed therapist, and so is the mother of my children. And so we were able to bounce a lot of ideas. She was never active in any religion, so she kind of had an outsider's perspective, anyway, to begin with.
Yep.
And so being able to talk with people uh, who have both left the church, and people who have never been in the church, or people who have never been religious, helped me sort of see it from an outsider's perspective and be okay with it. Being okay with the fact that I left, being okay with discovering a new identity. So being able to just talk has been a tremendous help for me. And it not necessarily, expensive talk therapy, but talking with anybody who has a different perspective on the religion and on the church. Yeah.
Yep.
Like I said, I have kids too. And they're great to sort of talk with, and try to try to raise without the church. Learning
Yes.
to raise them without religion is a real coping mechanism for me, because I can see from their perspective, from such little innocent children, how detrimental and dangerous the conditioning can be. And so when I see them not interested in it, that makes me just the happiest person on earth.
What though would happen? How would you feel if your children decided to take an interest in a Christian God, whatever sort of God they want to? How would you feel then?
I'd be okay with it. I'd welcome
Okay.
it. I would let them make that decision. I would certainly let them know how I feel. I think that's fair. It might take me some time to sort of deal with that, but I don't ever want to tell them that they couldn't do anything. I don't ever want to tell them that they're limited to what to believe, how to act. But I would definitely point out some of the discrepancies that I see and some of the deficiencies in religious teaching that I experienced and that I can see. But again, I would leave that decision up to them. I mean, I cross my fingers and hope not, but that would be their decision, and I would respect that.
Yeah. Unlike what happens in both the organizations, whether Mormon or JDubs, free will.
Yeah.
As it were, the choice, make a choice. So you had therapy, you benefited, you're obviously a therapist now. You've been able to help any other ex-Mormons?
I hope so. I associate with a few that I knew from back home, that I knew from, different places where I lived. I can only hope that I'm helping them along their journey. I've never been in practice where I've spoken with people leaving religion or leaving the church. But yeah, I mean, if again, if that's someone asks me about it, if someone approaches me about it, absolutely. And I hope I am. I can think of a few people in my mind right now that I've been talking to for quite a while, and I can only hope that I've helped them along their journey and their path.
Well, that's great. It really is. So were there any other things that helped you along the way when it comes to coping, coming to grips with what you're going through, that helped you?
Yeah, I think that also, and I don't know how this would relate to people leaving the Jehovah's Witness church, but interacting and staying friends with people who are still active members and not necessarily. Yeah, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
Doesn't happen.
I should just stop right there. But no, just trying to respect the fact that they still believe it, because it's very difficult. Because I remember when I was an active Mormon, and I couldn't stand other people, razzing me about being Mormon or my beliefs, and it really just made me distance myself emotionally from those people. And so I think with me respecting the fact that they believe, not respecting their beliefs, but just respecting the fact that they still believe, I think helps me. It helps me internalize that. It helps me feel a little more free, because I can now say, I respect your, that the fact that you do believe, but I don't. And I think it's a two-way sort of respect thing that comes into play when we do that. And I think that's really helped me kind of cope with that as well, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, because, a lot of the JDubs, there's so many who want to get their families out. Wake them up. Like an example with me, my daughter was in. The only reason my daughter is out nowadays has very little to do with me, has everything to do with her, where she asked questions. If she didn't ask those questions, she'd possibly still be in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was nothing I could do with my daughter. My son, who's still in, zip, nada, I can't do anything unless he asks me a question. So it's nice to hear from your perspective that it's very similar when it comes to Mormonism.
Yeah, I think so. I think so because immediately they're going to put on their defenses
Yeah.
when they interact with somebody who they know has left, who they know doesn't believe. When they start to talk about the normal things that they talk about, which are church things, Mormon related
Yep.
things, or in
Yep.
your case, Jehovah's Witnesses related things. Immediately their defenses go up. Oh, this
Yeah.
person is good. I know this person doesn't believe. They're gonna say something. I'm just gonna wait for that. And it doesn't do anything. I don't think for anybody who is still active.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Okay, so you've got along this so far along this line, you got just the one child.
Two
Oh,
girls.
you got
Two girls.
two little
Yeah,
girls.
yeah. Two girls. 7-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Have they changed your life apart
Oh,
from when you woke up and wrote your letter?
Absolutely. Emotionally, yeah, I never knew I could experience so many different emotions.
Yeah.
Being angry and frustrated, yet loving at the same time. It's just so weird. It's kind of like being in religion again. You're just like, you don't know why you feel that way, but no, they're wonderful kids. They're beautiful little kids, and I love them to death. Yeah.
So what's your life like now? How long have you been out from the Mormons?
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
So compare it to 8 years ago when you were still in,
Mm-hmm.
and look at your life now. What's it like?
It's a lot less guilty. I feel less guilty. Less guilty.
Yep.
I mean, I can do things that I don't, that I couldn't then. I don't feel shameful. I don't feel guilty for some of the normal human behaviors that we all experience. That we're like drinking coffee and drinking tea and having sex. I know you just did that panel on sex, which was phenomenal, by the way.
Yep.
But yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, there's just the natural inclinations that religion teaches you to push down, or the guilt brings it up, or if you bring it up, it's just sheer guilt and pain. I don't live that way anymore. I don't have to be bound down by the chains, the ball and chain of guilt and shame for just being a normal human being. And things are good. Things are great. I love not feeling like I have to do a specific thing to appease a higher power that I don't believe in. I don't. I feel like the things that I do to help people, I'm doing it out of the goodness of my heart. I'm not doing it because he's up there watching me, or he's gonna put a couple tick marks on my record. I'm doing it because that's what we do as human beings, and to come to the understanding that I don't need this. I don't need the church to do that. I don't need the church to feel good about myself. I don't need the church to feel proud of myself. I don't need the church to I'm looking at this comment, life's too short to feel guilty your entire life. And that's very true. That's very true. I love the fact that I now have a full life ahead of me where I don't have to hold myself back. Yeah.
What are you most looking forward to in the future?
Fame and fortune, but I a little too late to achieve that. With respect to religion, I'm really looking forward to seeing the evolution of these churches. I've just started to sort of educate myself on the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm fascinated by watching some of these with the governing body talk. And these people share these, especially Stephen Lett. That guy is
Rubber face. Oh, I didn't say that.
He's a fun one to watch. But seeing the evolution of these churches with the social pressure, with the political atmosphere around the world, and how these churches are going to change, and how they're going to sort of little by little start to crumble. I mean, it's inevitable. It's given. It's just going to happen. That's what happens to American religion, and that's what's happened to American religion. And so it's just going to be really interesting to see how the church, both churches, really respond to the social pressures of the day. Yeah, and just watch,
Yeah.
see what happens, see what the members do, see what the ex-members do, and what they have to say. It's just really exciting. It's never the same thing. It's never the same experience. So it's just it's going to be fun to see how they evolve.
Yeah. Have you got any goals that you'd like to try and reach in the future with your children and
With my
your
children,
wife?
yeah, I'm trying to get my children more interested in music. I mean, that's a part of I guess that's a coping skill that I've kind of used in the past and currently use. But as far as getting them excited about music, about how to stay active, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, yeah, goals. Jeez, I don't know. That's a tough one. Yeah.
So you're looking forward to the future without trepidation, without guilt, without all those things that when we were part of the respective organizations we were in, you're looking forward to an amazing future?
Absolutely. I don't want to ever feel the guilt and the shame, the religious guilt and shame that comes with just assumption
Yeah.
and just thought and it's it's just everything just is kind of looking up. I'm looking forward, and it's just nice
Yeah.
to live a life that's just free from the ball and chain, and sure, there's going to be times when I look back, there's going to be things that remind me. I constantly look at the horizon and I'll see things that remind me of my mission, and
Yes.
and I find myself sometimes singing or humming church songs, church hymns,
Mhm.
because it's just such a part of my identity still, and that's okay too. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Some of those songs are okay. They're pretty cool, but they're very catchy. So there's going to be times when I'm triggered a little bit, but being able to know how to deal with it is what I really look forward to. Just having coping skills and mechanisms that are going to kind of take away that those triggering
Yeah.
feelings and just kind of make
Yeah.
me feel a little more grounded. Yeah.
Okay, so in the JDubs, they talk about kingdom melodies. Hopefully that doesn't trigger anybody who's watching the live stream. What do they call them in the Mormon church?
Oh, what kingdom melodies? Is that what you said?
Kingdom melodies. Yep,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what they call them. What do they call them with the Mormons?
Hymns.
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 Okay. Yep.
Yep. Hymns. Yep. Hymns of the
So
church.
can you give us an idea of how when one comes in your head, because you're right, something will happen and you'll go, "Dun, dun, 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 dun." How do you cope with those songs that do pop up occasionally?
Yeah.
Have you got any
Uh,
mechanisms that you find helpful? Because I
No,
say that you put up a little meme or something like that in any of the groups, and
right, yeah.
especially if it's a song that, say, from the Brown songbook, they've got silver one at the moment. They've had several others, and
Yeah,
they've
we have a
changed
green
the
one.
songs all the time. Yeah, and one or two of them are really bouncy, and when we were
Yeah.
at the meetings, we would sing out really loud. Most people knew the words. Those songs come up into the head, and for many, it drives them nuts. And
Yeah.
how does a song that you found really bouncy, and some of them were good, like you mentioned, how did you cope, and how do you cope now when they do come up in your head?
I tell someone. I immediately tell
Oh,
someone.
okay.
Whether whoever's with me, I'll say, "Oh my God, I'm that song I'm whistling comes from the Mormon
Yep.
Church. Can you believe that?" And then I'll sing it to them or whatever, and I'll tell them, share the words of it or whatever. But I'm working on a project now with a couple of friends where we're taking some of the hymns and we're adding some guitar solos to it.
Oh, okay.
To make them a little more rock ballady, and I think that doing that is it's just been a lot of fun. It's been a comedic journey at the same time. Whenever a hymn comes up, I was a couple of years ago, I was walking through a hotel hallway, and someone started whistling a hymn that I recognized. And
Okay.
they started. I had no idea who this person was, but I just heard them whistling it, and so I stopped them in the hallway and I said, what are you singing?" And they said, "Oh, that's an LDS hymn." And I said, and so I can't remember what it was, but I said the name of it, and they said, "Oh, are you LDS?" And I said, "No, but I was at one time." "Oh, okay, you were." That was the end of the conversation. They didn't want to go on from that.
Of course.
Yeah, but it was very funny. It was very comical. I wrote about it. I shared with people about it, and I didn't find any threat or any kind of trigger with that. If they were the only people that I could talk to at that time to say that I recognize that, then that was okay. That helped me get through it too, just talking with them, you know. But yeah, so a big thing is we're sort of kind of adjusting these hymns in kind of a rock and roll version just to try to make it a little more fun, so that this new version will stick in my head a little more than the original hymn.
Do you find anything else pops up? You know, I was having a look at the New Zealand Mormon page. Magic underwear, whatever they're called, magic undergarments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Temple garments is what they call them.
Oh, temple garments. Okay. Does that trigger you much?
It doesn't. It did at one point. Okay. It did. It felt very intrusive to have to wear those after I was out of the church. I felt really, really angry about the fact that I just didn't know how to wear underwear. That wasn't temple garment underwear.
Officially endorsed underwear.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it costs money too. You pay for the underwear. It's not given to you.
Really?
Yeah, you pay for it. No, it's not given to you. You pay for it.
Send them a bill. Get that money back.
Yeah, I wish. Oh God, if I could get all that money back, I'd be well off. But yeah, the temple garment that doesn't trigger me much anymore. I know the church put out, with the social pressure again, with the evolution of the church put out a video a couple of years ago where they explained or tried to explain the temple garments. Yeah, they showed the pictures.
Have you seen the JDub video?
Have I seen it?
YouTube Hillogate. That's a video that both is one for male and one for female. If you can still find it, they got a little bit upset and started cleaning YouTube of certain propaganda.
Yeah. Well, this is actually a video that the church itself produced and put out.
No, this was one from the JDubs as well.
Oh, one from them too. Okay, yeah.
So what was it like? What was their video like? We had to laugh at the JDub one, but anyway.
Yeah. And and they're all silly. And this one was just as silly. I mean, it was just, they showed a picture of the temple garments sitting on a table or something, if I remember correctly. And they talked a little bit about what it meant and this and that. But the fact is that they're extremely uncomfortable things to wear. I mean, like I said, when I was in Ecuador, it was very hot and humid. I wore those things, 24 hours a day. And they stick to you like saran wrap at times, and it's just something you do. You do it out of obedience. You do it because that's what you're supposed to do. And again, the guilt and the shame that comes with not doing it is pretty heavy indeed.
Yeah, you got to laugh at some of the stuff, don't you? Looking back,
you do. That is the only thing you can do is laugh at the silliness of it. From the outsider's perspective, it just doesn't make any sense. And you wonder how anybody can believe that, although we went through the whole period of staunchly believing it.
Oh, yeah.
But once you're out, it's a whole new ballgame. It's just a whole new way of looking at it.
So let me ask you,
sure.
If somebody, whether they're Jehovah's Witnesses, whether they're Mormons, because there's so many similarities when you've heard what you've said and compared it to what I know we go through as being dragged up in the JDubs. What would you encourage them? What bit of advice could you give them if they're sitting there and they are questioning?
If they're questioning, I would say research. Because that's exactly what the churches don't want you to do. They don't want you to research, and there's a reason they don't want you to research any of this stuff, because it's reality. They don't want you to look at this and like us find it comical and leave. And so there's something to actually researching that history and getting it from original sources and being able to discuss that and ask questions. I mean, that's just the only way I think that people can really come to terms with what really is the truth of the matter. And that's the history that's not whitewashed. I think that's so vitally important. See what the churches are hiding. Why is it so important to not teach your members about this? Well, because it's weird. Because it's weird, and God would. I don't think a God would endorse the bizarre nature of these types of religions and the things that they do. That's weird. And so I would definitely tell people research. Read the books they don't want you to read, because that's reality. That's where the truth is.
Yep. And just for those ones who've gone through the research, they've gone through their journey, the anger, the sadness, and everything else that happens there. They're coming out the other side. Now, if their head is still either JDub or Mormonified, if that's a word, putting your therapy hat on.
Yeah.
What okay, we've got the research. That's pretty clear, pretty simple. How can they be helped by therapy to get their head around the things they've been through?
I would immediately say it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel still connected to it in that way, because that's an identity, and you just can't brush off your identity like that. And that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with still believing some of it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to believe it, because that's your comfort zone. That's where you need to go. So I think that's a difference between religion too, and these two churches, is that a church wouldn't say that. They wouldn't say it's okay to question things. It's not okay to question things. It's not okay to have doubts. One of the very common quotes in the Mormon church by a high leader is, "Doubt your doubts before you doubt the church." So doubt your doubts. Doubt your doubts before you doubt the church. It doesn't make any sense. And it's also demonizing the fact that you have questions, that you have doubts. So I would flip that around, and I would say it's okay. It's okay to still feel connected to the church, whatever church that is. It's okay to still want to believe. I mean, when I was a member, and I'm sure you can agree, I loved believing. I believed it. I loved it, because it was just, I was on my path. I was on the path to heaven. I was on the path to God. And that's a really good feeling when you do believe it. So flipping it around, it's okay. It's okay to believe, or it's okay to still hold on to some of those feelings. That stuff, it'll come little by little. Once you start questioning, it's very hard to go back. Some people do. Or some people say they do. I always like to say there's two kinds of people in this world: those who, those who stay out of the church, those who say they come back. I don't remember. Anyways, it's okay to hang on to that, and to still have that as part of your identity. It'll come. It'll get to the point where you realize that it's not what it's proposed to be. And that's when things really do change for that person. That's a whole new chapter, and that's a whole new sort of way of life from that point forward. But when people have done the research, when they do have the questions, and they might still be holding on to that, that's okay. That's okay. I support that 100%, and I think that it'll come with time.
Yeah, time.
Yep.
Well, I really want to say thank you for coming on to our live stream. It's been very entertaining.
This has been great. This has been great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for accepting it. For those who are listening, this is just part one of a series of these sorts of things that we're going to be doing. We've got hopefully an amazing woman coming up next month who's from a Jewish background, 9 kids, the journey she's taken. So many similarities to the Jehovah's Witnesses, just like the Mormons. So for those ones who are watching, thank you very much for being here. We've enjoyed the conversation. We've enjoyed being able to sit and talk with Geoff. He's allowed us some of his time on a Friday evening, which he could have been watching Star Wars or something.
Star Trek.
Oh, you like Star Trek?
I'm a Trekker.
Oh, you are a Trekkie.
Not a Trekkie, a Trekker.
Oh, a Trekker. Oh.
That's an entire.
That could be another subject.
Itself.
So thanks once again, Geoff, for being here. Thanks for all those on the live stream. Thank you for being here. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation we've had with Geoff, and seeing the similarities that we've got between JDubs and Mormons. But until our next live stream,
We look forward to seeing you again. Keep safe, everybody. Look after yourselves. And thanks for being here. Thanks for the comments. And until next time, we'll catch you later. Bye for now.